So I want to talk about loyalty. And when we look at someone, let's say Dwyane Wade, after being with Miami, I think it's 13 years. He's been with the squad 12, 13 years, going to Chicago. I mean, should the Miami fans be upset? Let me put it that way.
Should they be upset? I mean, Wade's from Chicago. I mean, at this point, I don't know. Like, I don't know if I want to be paying Wade the money he's making. So if
Yeah.
I'm Miami and I'm able to rebuild and reuse a lot of his money, maybe justifies trading Dragic now to another contender. Like, look, he's way better at this point than Kobe was when he was retiring.
Mhm.
But at the same point, you do want to know where you stand. Are you contending or are you pretending? Like, I think Chicago, it was kind of a weird signing. I don't especially love him next to Rondo and Butler. But I think just for legacy, I don't know. I think it's a bit overrated. I think once you've won a couple of championships and played enough seasons, I mean, he's given them his best years.
Mhm.
Like, no one's going to argue his best years are ahead.
Mhm.
Like, if you were, I think that's one of the arguments, right? Like, KD's walking into his prime. So it's like he has his best years ahead or ish. Kate and Wade should be like a backup player. So like not a backup player, but have more of a secondary star role. And at this
Mhm.
point, going back to home, I don't see it as a negative thing as much. I think it's a bit overrated, the whole home team thing, and it plays to some weird outcomes. Like I said, players sticking a little bit longer than he should.
Mhm. I think there's a nostalgia element too, because in generations past, guys would stick with the team forever, in large part because you couldn't get traded. Unless you were a superstar like Wilt Chamberlain, who just had all that star power and that muscle to get traded, a lot of guys were stuck with teams for 10, 12 years. So that's just the way the game used to be. And then there's people like, exceptions like John Stockton, who played 19 years in Utah. He just happened to be drafted by a great team. It was a great fit, so he stayed with the marriage. It made sense for him to stay there. Not a lot of guys do that anymore. And of course, one who did this week, Dirk Nowitzki, re-signing with Dallas. What do you think about Dirk staying there? I mean, is it worth his while to stay in what I kind of think is a sinking ship? It has been a sinking ship since 2011. They haven't won a playoff series since they won the title.
Look, I think Mark Cuban was saying all the right things. He said Dirk can do what Dirk did. Dirk chose to sign that. I'm pretty sure if he says, I want to get traded or released, Cuban's going to be like, you've done enough for us.
Mm-hmm.
This was Dirk's decision. He wasn't forced into this on any level.
Mm-hmm.
I would have left personally to go to a
Yeah, me
contender.
too. Me too.
I don't think, look, they got some interesting players. They got Harrison Barnes. They got Andrew Bogut. But I don't think this makes them a contender. I think this makes them a fringe playoff team, which to me is not good enough. I would have definitely gone to, imagine he had put his hat in the ring for OKC before KD leaves. Does KD leave that team? Imagine he goes to, San Antonio to create an old man front court that kind of just rotates and plays 20-something minutes. He goes to Cleveland to be, that center who can shoot threes or does what KD did before. Like, I think if Dirk goes to Golden State, I think there's less of an outcry because of the same reason I gave for Wade. Like, if you had Dirk sitting there and took Harrison Barnes' money and he's playing the four instead of KD right now, I think people are cheering for Golden State.
Yeah.
Whereas now, I think on some levels they're looking like the bad guy.
Mm-hmm. I got to mention, kind of on a similar level, but it doesn't get mentioned enough. Manu Ginobili re-signed with the Spurs this week. It's the only franchise he's ever known in the NBA, and he apparently had a big offer from another team that he turned down to take less money to stay with the Spurs. And there's a certain nobility to that it also goes back to an older era, taking less to stay with an organization you want to be with. I find it quite fascinating. So let's jump to another interesting aspect of free agency.